I'm going to do one thing. Ken Marvin,
Yes.
that's your name. And you were born when and where?
June the 21st, 1921, Havre, Montana.
I love Montana. I love Havre. There's great winters over there.
Too damn cold. I was just 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old when we moved out here. So I don't remember a thing about Havre.
So where did you move to right to Gig Harbor?
Yeah,
Or
out by Horseshoe Lake.
and that was because your dad had work here, or?
No, my dad worked for the Great Northern, and they had a big strike in those days, and so somebody sold all those people that were laid off a bunch of property, a bunch of land out here, and there was nothing but logged off stuff, and that's where Vaughan and Key Center and down through there they call the Montana settlement.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Huh. So is that where you grew up then?
Yes, I grew up a little ways from Horseshoe Lake. There's a little schoolhouse there. It's still standing. It's called Glenwood. And then I went to my junior high school in South Kitsap in Port Orchard. And then the last 3 years, I went up to what they call Gig Harbor Union High School. So I graduated in 1939.
Now, where was Gig Harbor Union High School?
It's right up here on the hill. What do they call it? Used to be Goodman, but what the heck is it now?
Is it the building is still there?
Oh yeah, they're figured on tearing it down. It's kind of a junior high or something.
Huh. So what was Gig Harbor like as before the war as a
It
kid?
was just a fishing village. All Slavonians and Norwegians and Swedes. Swedes were up in the valley, what they call Crescent Valley up here, and they were all real hard-working people. Very nice.
So the community's kind of Swedes over here and Slavs over here?
Yes.
Really? So they set up their own little...
Oh, yeah. They were fishermen too, the Norwegians and the Swedes. They were all nice people. I went to school with all of them. They're wonderful people.
So it had a real international flavor to Gig Harbor.
Well, yes, there was the Slavonians outnumbered most of them for a long time, and then I have two Slavonian son-in-laws, and they're tremendous. One of them works for Centutel, and the other one he's the tugboat captain for Crowley.
I know Crowley well.
Yes.
Huh. As a high school kid, where was the hangout in Gig Harbor? Or what did you do for...
There was no hangouts. We just played football and baseball and went home. I don't remember. Really, there wasn't. We didn't have any money to hang out and do anything with it. But we did. We used to come down to a little school here now where the Latter St. Date's school is, building is, where the Mormon church is in town. And that was I think they called it Lincoln School. And that's about all we done on Saturdays and Sundays afternoons was play football and baseball, tag football. That's about all there was to do.
Movie theaters?
Oh, there was a movie in town, but I didn't have a car then, not until later on in high school, and so we rode our bikes all the way from Horseshoe Lake, and then I got to play football or baseball. We rode back, and very seldom we ever went to a movie, because I think that cost 25 or 30 cents.
Kids today probably would hear you say you rode your bike from Horseshoe, and they couldn't even fathom the thought of riding.
Well, that's got to be 10, 15 miles, I think.
And I assume the roads were a little different then.
They were all gravel roads. There was no blacktop or no cement.
What did you do in the summer? Did you have jobs?
Oh, we picked berries and picked cascara bark and sold it. And later on, my last 3 years in high school, I went to Kent where my brother lived, and I worked in a cold storage plant, and I worked on a railroad the last summer. And hey, I had to work. I used to buy my own clothes and stuff.
Kent must have seemed like the big city, or
Well, it was the railroad town, or the railroad went through there.
because what was quote downtown Gig Harbor like back then? Was there a village or stores? Or?
No, there was a Peach Tavern where the Cellar Inn is now, and then across from there it was a grocery store. Kath owned it, and then there was a drugstore, which Lee Thrash owned, and a dentist's office. That's about all there was. Oh, there was a little, I think there was a little restaurant. There was a beer hall there. And then down where the Tides Tavern in, when I first came there, that's where the ferry came in. The ferry dock there from Tacoma, from Point Defiance. And I remember we had a Model T, and we always had to have a full gas tank because that's pretty steep coming up out of there,
That's funny. A lot of people wouldn't even think about the fact that a ferry came here, because for the kids today, the bridge has always been there.
Oh, yeah.
That must have made a big change when the bridge came.
I guess it did. I was in San Diego when the bridge opened, and then I came home in 1940. I think it was September 1940, and I was across it a couple of times. Then when I went back, and I think it was in November or October of 40, it blew down. Because they even let the high school out. My wife was at high school up here, and they let the high school out to go watch the bridge fall down.
Now, how did you get in the service?
Well, my brother was in the service, and to start with, my grandfather, my great grandfather, and my two great uncles were all in the Civil War. And I used to read a lot about the Civil War, and I even got letters that he wrote home on the Civil War. That I just wanted to be in the service. And 35, when my brother went in the Marine Corps, and then I was in Kent, and they had a National Guard outfit. So this kid talked me into, let's join the National Guard. So we went to Fort Lewis, and it was an artillery outfit too. It was a 75 millimeter or a 3-inch outfit. And it was a lot of fun. I spent a couple of summers.
So that was before the war?
Before the war, yes.
How old were you when you got in the Guard?
I was about 15, 16, something like that.
Now, did they let younger kids in the Guard, or did you have to...
Well, you kind of lied a little bit to your age, but there was so many of us that about that age,
And was that like the Guard today, where we call them weekend warriors, where...
That's what we were. We met once a week, but then, see, when I come back to school, well, I had a heck of a time because I'd have to go to Tacoma on a Tuesday night, and so I stayed with some people there, and I finally gave that up because I couldn't attend.
So that's where you started to get your training, though.
Yes, and then after I graduated, I got a trip to Alaska on a fishing boat. And when I came back, my brother lived in Kent, and I stayed with him and worked on the railroad. And then the war started in England, and I thought, hey, I didn't want to be in the Guards. I wanted to be in the Marine Corps like my brother had been, see. So I was just on a summer crew, and so when we got laid off, I headed for Seattle for the recruit depot, for a recruiting office, signed up.
Now, was that before Pearl Harbor?
Oh, this was in 1939.
Oh, okay, so a long time before.
October the 3rd, 1939.
So did you already, it sounds like you were pretty knowledgeable about what was going on worldwide, though. Did you have an idea that we were headed towards a war?
Well, we all thought, what the devil is. Sure, and I wanted to be trained, I didn't. So I decided I'd go in the Marine Corps. And in those days, they were running them through pretty fast. I was in the 39th platoon in 1939, and I don't know how many more platoons went through that year, but it didn't seem tough, because I just got off the railroad working, and I was pretty well fit, so it didn't bother me.
Where'd you do boot camp?
In San Diego, Marine Corps Depot in San Diego.
Huh.
And a year and a half ago, I was back there. First time in 60 years, my grandson graduated from boot camp. I have a grandson in the Marine Corps.
So he went to your grandson went to the same boot camp that you?
Yes.
Boy, that must, going back, did that bring back memories, or?
Oh, it sure did. Yeah, I like it. I remember the parade ground and the buildings surrounding the parade ground. I don't know how many times I've marched up and down that parade field. I know it's quite a few times.
So you were what, 18?
18 when I was 18 in June, see, and so it was all pretty much the same age.
Was that the first time you'd been away from? Well, of course you've been up to Alaska, so you've been away from home, and.
Oh, sure.
What'd your mom think about you getting in the service? Do you remember?
She thought it was a pretty good idea, because in '39, our jobs were hard to come by, and I'd get off this. I was just on a summer crew on a railroad, and what else? There wasn't much to do.
That's the one thing a lot of people forget is, as you read history, you got to look back and see what the economy had been like.
It was zilch. Yeah, I made $85 a month on the railroad. When I joined the Marine Corps, I made $20.80 a month. So, what the hell? You got all your everything furnished, all your clothes, and 3 meals a day, and 2 bits for a haircut.
Didn't have to decide what to wear in the morning. You knew what.
Oh, hell no.
Do you remember any of the people that went through boot camp with you?
Oh, sure.
Are they some that you made lifelong friends with, or did you just come and go?
Oh, there's a few I made lifelong friends with, yeah. But there isn't many of us left. Just like in the 400 and some that was on the island, I think there's about 114 left or something. So, when you get 80, you're cheating on life.
Did you have a nickname?
No, this last time in prison camp I got a nickname. Well, I did. I done a lot of boxing, and they used to call me Punchy. I had a nickname for quite a few. It was a lot of fun.
Did you box in the service?
Oh, just a little bit.
Because I know didn't they have different, like they'd have a football team, or they might have a baseball team?
Well, I mostly played handball,
So from San Diego, where did you go?
Pearl Harbor.
Before?
Before the war.
Before any of us knew what Pearl Harbor was? Was it before it was attacked?
Oh, yes, before it was attacked, yes, yeah. See, the fleet used to be stationed in San Diego, and then for some reason, they took the fleet out of San Diego to Pearl Harbor. And so I think it was late January of 41, we went to Pearl Harbor.
What was that like? Because everybody always talks about it, that I interviewed talks about it after the event. What was it like? Did you have the faintest idea where Pearl Harbor was?
Oh, sure. We went out on the Enterprise, That was about 4 days. And it was warm. California's kind of warm, but it took us a while to get used to the climate out there, because it can be hotter than the dickens one minute, like you're sitting out looking at movies in the evening, be real warm, and then all of a sudden here comes a cloud, and you're drenched. So it's just clouds come and go. But well, there wasn't much to do. You go downtown there was so many servicemen there, and but they used to take us every Wednesday to a place called Kaneohe Beach, and we could swim. We swam in the surf, and we had a lot of fun.
It's not at all the Hawaii of today, right? I mean, it was a pretty undeveloped. It's not the big tourist attraction that it is today, or was it?
Well, there was quite a few tourists. There used to be a lot of movie stars come out there. I remember Dorothy Lamour and Big Mouth. What was her name?
Not Carmen Miranda.
No. There was another one. But anyway, they came out on the ships, on the Loreline and the Matsonia. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We wouldn't go downtown very often.
Where were the Marines stationed over there?
Right in Pearl Harbor. There was a regular guard unit, and then right across from there was for our anti-aircraft battalion. There was about 800-900 or more in a defense battalion.
Were you at a ready state, or was it just kind of training?
Training, yes.
So nobody really thought. In retrospect, we all know Pearl Harbor now, but everybody, you were over there just doing your job, and.
Yeah.
How'd you get from there to Wake Island? Then was that your next?
Yes, we out of the battalion on Johnson Island and Palomar Island, where the Marines were on there, but they were all sent for the first defense, and all these batteries would split up. So in August of '41, we went on a cargo ship to Wake Island.
Now tell me about your view of. Well, first of all, what was your duty? What was your job now when you went to Wake Island?
The job was just to work, but this is real. I got on this cargo ship where I was just going up the gangplank. We was passing our sea bags up the gangplank, and I was in charge. I was a corporal, In those days, a corporal was a kind of a big shot, self-acclaimed, I was in charge of that, so I said, "Well, I'll carry the last one up," and there's not supposed to be anybody in this gangway. And I have my head down, and I'm going up there, and I bump into somebody, and I said, "What the hell are you doing here?" I looked down, Christ, there's white shoes, white pants, and the further I looked up, the skirt I got, it was an officer, Navy officer. It was my buddy from school here. He was an ensign on this cargo ship. I said, "Secor, what the hell are you doing on this rust bucket?" And a couple of days later, I said, "Hey, Secor, where the hell are we going?" He said, "Wake Island." I said, "I don't mean a thing." But it was really comical.
What a small world, huh?
Oh man.
So did the Marines get along with the Navy when you were on ship, or was there always?
Sure. That's that Marine and Navy. Hey, like we cleaned out a nightclub one time in San Diego because the Army was picking on some sailors. There was about 15 or 20 of us there, but we were in civilian clothes.
So Navy and Marines okay, but Army and Marines. So when you arrived at your beautiful vacation destination of Wake Island, what was your view when you pulled in there? What did you think when you saw Wake Island?
We were just in tents, you know. And they were nice tents. They were all wooden decks and sides, you know, and screened, and just a tent over the top of it. It wasn't too bad. And then we started to work, you know, putting our guns in placement and placing it. These 3-inch guns are real good. They weigh 6.5 tons, and they got outriggers, you know, like this and like that. And so it had to clear all that. And we were just out there to put those in, because we were supposed to be, before Christmas, relieved by the 3rd Defense, which had come out from the States.
What had been at Wake Island before we got there?
Pan American Airways. And that's all. It's just about all that had been there.
What was Pan Am using it for?
Well, they flew those clippers, you know, from Frisco clear to the Philippines, and
so was that they would stop there and
that was it. Yeah, they
fuel
had
up and
they had a regular hotel, big hotel there.
Was the hotel still active and everything when you started moving in?
Oh yeah, when we were there, yeah. Oh sure, they had planes coming through there maybe once a week or something like that, and that's where this Nomura and Caruso, they stopped over there overnight on their way to the United States just before the war started.
Huh. So why did you think that the Marines were in there building all this stuff up all of a sudden? Just
hey, who's ever up there, he's making all the decisions, you know. So yeah, we were just putting these guns in place for another battalion, see. And then we were supposed to be back in Pearl Harbor by Christmas, but it was 4 years later we got back there.
Wow. What's the island look like for somebody who hadn't been there? I mean, when you pulled in, is it palm trees and beautiful sands?
No. There's not a. You see that picture there? It says Marine barracks and stuff. There was a palm tree on the island. I don't know where that picture come from. It must have been in Honolulu or someplace, because they got them there. But these were ironbark trees, or what they call Ligman vita, and they weren't very high.
So scrub brushy kind of.
Well, yeah.
Huh.
And then our friends, the Goonie birds and the albatross and the terns, and there was another beautiful bird there with big long red feathers. I can't remember the name of them, but there was thousands of them.
So what did you do? I mean, I assume most of the time it was working, and it's hot, it's nasty working conditions. How did you pass time when you had a little free time? Or did you?
Well, we didn't have a hell of a lot of free time. Well, we would go down in the ocean and you know, snorkel, try to spearfish and stuff like that. But they didn't want us out to swim in the ocean on account of the sharks. And then they had a big swimming pool. The civilians, this was an old civilian camp we were in, and it was all fenced in with chicken wire and everything. So the eels and the sharks and stuff couldn't get in there. That's about all there was to do. You just fish and when Devereaux come out there, and there was no fooling around. We worked 6-7 days a week.
Now, how far is that from Pearl Harbor? About
2,300 miles.
2,300 miles. And so you were at Wake Island when Pearl Harbor got attacked?
Oh, yes. See, it was Sunday in Wake Island. I mean, it was Sunday in Pearl Harbor. And it was Monday morning where we were, because we were across the date line. We were across the international date line.
And how did you hear about that?
Well, they got it on the radio, and we were at breakfast in the mess hall, and then they saw us, hollered and sounded general quarters. So we ran to our tents and grabbed our rifles. And in each tent, this was about 4 months before, there was 5 of us in a tent, and they had a case of ammunition, on each tent and 2 cases of hand grenades. So we just grabbed our rifles and the ammunition and the hand grenades and hopped on a truck and took off for. So you could see how far it is from where our camp was there around to where our position was on Peel Island.
Because you say that Wake Island is about 3 miles, and the other islands are about a mile.
Half a mile.
Half a mile.
Half a mile, half a square mile. But there's, I don't know how long. I know I think it was about 5 miles from where.
Not very far.
We just hopped on a truck and in about 45 minutes we were on our guns.
So, was it scary or what? I mean, was there reality to what had happened, or was that just?
Well, nobody would believe it, you know. We had to go right through the civilian camp, and these guys were working, and we said, "Hey, the war started. Now go away," you know. And so we found out about 11 o'clock. They had brought a truckload of food, and a bunch of us were gathered down there with our mess kits, and here come these airplanes. And the next thing they were dropping bombs. And that's where they got the Pan American Hotel, which wasn't too far from us. And actually, I actually could see they come so low. I could see the pilot in that airplane and that bomber. At first, we thought they were at the other end down where they saw them. They thought they were ours because there was supposed to be a bunch of PBYs come in that morning. See, and there was a patrol, a 4-flight patrol up, but they were up at 13,000 feet. And the Japanese came in at about 500-600 feet. See, they're 1,000 feet, and under low clouds.
Where were you? What did you see? I mean, was it just like a beehive coming at you, or?
I just saw these planes, and we thought, "What the hell are they doing?" You know. And after we heard all the explosions and everything, we ran to our guns. But they were so low that I think we fired a few rounds. But hell, you know, they're going so fast and so low that it was just wasting ammunition for us.
Does fear take over? I mean,
no.
That's what I hear a lot of people say. It's real funny because the movies make it all, you know, but it sounds like a whole different. There's not even the realization that really they're coming at you, or that you.
Well, I never really got scared until the last few days. So we were on these guns. I was on the azimuth. You know, I got a crank in each hand, and you're just matching bugs, and you hardly ever looked up. You just. Once in a while, I'd look up, and I could see those bombs coming down, you know. But as long as you can see them, why, you're all right.
and that's amazing because you physically see this bomb.
Oh yes.
Because it's not like a plane that's 50,000 feet up in the air. They're coming in 500 feet, and you see them drop off.
Well, that's 500 feet. That was the first morning. But I never saw any of those bombs, but I heard them. But I mean, afterwards, you know, when they come over, they started coming over about 8,000-10,000 feet, and then they get higher and higher because we was getting rid of a few of them.
Getting settled in and better at.
Oh yes.
So were the bombs close, hitting close to you, or?
Well, not for the first few days. No. And see, there was a 5-inch. There was 2 5-inch guns, Seacoast guns, or maybe 50 yards, 60 yards from our gun, or maybe a little further than that. But they wanted us to move on account of, you know, after you fire at those planes a few days, those guys are taking pictures up there. And so normally you should move every 2 or 3 days. And we stayed there about 3 or 4 days, or 4 or 5, anyway, then we moved. But before we moved, that was when it was on the 4th day, I believe, that the Japs came in with their ships and tried to take the island.
And they came on the Wake Island end?
They came on the Wake Island side, and the Wilkes because the island we were on, and there was this. You could walk out there half a mile, with the tide. It was so shallow. See, they would have run aground.
Now, so this is like 4 days, 3 or 4 days. This is going on.
Yes.
They'd bomb for a while and then disappear for a while, and then, or was it just constant?
They bombed every day. Usually around 11:30.
Did you ever sleep?
Oh yeah, we slept rather than guns. We never did go back to our tents because there wasn't any, after the second day there wasn't any tents left. They had obliterated them. But we did go back the first night, and one man out of each tent, and got our blankets. We had 2 blankets, and that was about it.
What about food?
Well, the civilians would bring us food. They were real good. There was 1,100 and some of them there, and you hear a lot about that they all run and hid, but hey, there was so damn many that helped us that we forgot about the ones that didn't.
So there, how many civilians roughly?
There was 1,150.
And how many Marines?
400.
So
And then we had, to start out with, we had 12 fighter planes, Grumman F-4Fs, but 7 of those got destroyed the first morning.
So we're down to 5.
So we're down to 5.
And did those 5 get up at all?
Oh
or?
yes, they were up there. They done good for themselves.
So did you have planes coming down out of the air and everything around you, or?
Always once in a while, and you could see them. But if you were watching, those planes up there were like in mine, or the elevation or anything, fellows on the instruments, you weren't doing a good job, see? You were goofing off.
You were.
So you kept your eyes right on that dilly bob. And
So is it like the movies portray? I mean, the movies portray fires going on and all sorts of things like that, or is it just mass destruction and everything's erased after the attacks?
well, the second day is when I got hit. I was just ordered to take a tractor and a trailer and go down to the bridge. There's a bridge across from Wake to Peel. And so before I got to that bridge where there must have been 50 or 60 civilians filling sandbags for us. And so I was waiting for this truck to get out of there so I could back this trailer down and get a load of sandbags. And so they asked me to see if you can pull it. They couldn't get the truck out, out of this. So I hooked onto it with this tractor. But before that, this Joe Kokachia, he was a civilian in charge of these people. He had a string of sandbags, like made a little alleyway, and so he said, "Run and jump in these things." We had it staggered, so he hooked me up, and so I'm taking up slack in the line, and I look back, and Jesus, everybody's running. So I just turned that on, I turned it off, and jumped right over the top of it, and I crawled underneath. And that's where I got a piece of shrapnel in my head. It glanced off the track to the side. But there was about 8 or 9 civilians that got killed there because they ran. The ones that stayed in those little sandbags and stuff.
You had that protection.
Yeah. And then that's when they hit the garage and they hit the hospital, which was on top of this hospital, a big red cross and everything. But they didn't mean anything to the Japanese.
Huh. This is, I think, the hardest thing because history books don't tell us this. What does your mind do during something like that? I mean, did you ever think they were going to get you, or does your mind totally check that out? And
I was never. No, I had written my mother, and I said they didn't make a bullet for me, and I thought I was pretty brave, you know.
So your mind does override, and basically you become somewhat fearless, not stupid.
Well, yeah,
but,
yeah.
I mean, you take your precautions, I assume, but
Oh, sure.
you still can do your job. So how long? Now you got wounded. What happened then to you?
Oh, I just walked back to because I started up this tractor, this Caterpillar, and jeez, oil was coming out the side, and I looked, there was a hole in one of the cylinders about like that, and I said, hell, I'll never make it back with this, so, and then me and this Kokachio, we run across the bridge to help some of these fellows out of the hospital that had been wounded a day or a couple of days before, you know, well, the day before. And so then we got him out of there, or we helped get him out of there. And then there was a big warehouse burning. I remember this was funny. This Navy officer, he come and he grabbed both of us. He said, "I want you to go put that fire out." Shit. There was no fire trucks were zilch here, you know. And I started to say something in this civilian. He flat told him, you know, because he wasn't in the service. He's told him damn near to get lost. He says, "What the hell you think we can do?"
Does in a situation like that? That's interesting because I never thought about that. In a situation like that, does rank disappear, or is that chain of command always keep things together?
Well, like on our guns, we had our commanding officer was a captain, and he was a wonderful fellow. But he never threw his rank around. No.
So it was respect.
No, I think the Marine Corps had tremendous officers.
I've got your mic cord falling off here a little bit, so. Now, when did Wake Island get taken over, or when did you get taken over?
December the 23rd, 1941.
So how many days was that you were under
I
it?
think we were 16 days we fought.
16 days. Wow. 400, and you said 400 Marines, 16 days.
And we had 21 miles of waterfront to cover, 21 miles of beach, you know, the shoreline.
So did they keep squeezing you down? Is that?
Well, no. This Wilkes Island, that was the one that, the last morning when they made the landing, well, they tried to take, but the Marines killed all but one person, all but one Japanese that was on that island. See, last morning communications were all chewed up, you know. I mean, in those days they didn't have these walkie-talkies and fancy radios and junk. It was all laid out, you know, on telephone lines. So.
So you lose those lines get broken and.
Yeah. Well, the only time we didn't get bombed in a day, one late evening, one of the pilots, he was making an evening patrol, and he spotted a submarine, and he sunk the submarine. And the next day we never got bombed. And that's when they figured out that this Jap submarine, that's how they could find the island. They come all the way from the Marshalls, see? And they were honing in on this submarine. So after they got the submarine, why, we didn't get bombed the next day. See, we never had any radar, no listening devices, no nothing. We just depended on the planes that were up above to spot them. Or we was on constant. We had men on watch all day long, you know, with field glasses and everything. And I remember one time, well, there was a daylight star, and lots of times you got a false alarm on that.
And you only had 5 planes to be up looking.
Well, then it got down to just one or two, see.
And there was nothing new coming in.
No.
Because Pearl Harbor was torn apart at that point, and so you're out there fending by yourself. So how did they finally take over? What happens at that point? When
they came in at night, on the 23rd. They came in and they ran two, across from the airfield on Wake. They ran two destroyers, old destroyers, on the beach to get the men off. And there was one 3-inch gun there, and he's a retired colonel now. He manned this gun. He wasn't even supposed to be on a 3-inch gun. I think he was a machine gun. And they put those two ships that came in. They put over 30 shells in those ships from a 3-inch gun. And from our position, we even fired. You know, we had about a minute and a half fuse, so they would burst right over the ships.
That would give a chance to send a lot of, when they burst.
Yes.
Yeah. Huh. So, did somebody finally give the
word to surrender?
Yeah.
Yes. There was a Navy captain, a Navy commander. He was in charge of the island, and he gave the word to surrender. And then we got word from Devereaux. He wasn't too far from us in a bomb shelter, and so we scuttled our guns, you know, and then we marched up to where he was. Then the Japs come all around us, made us take off all our clothes, all our skivvies and our shoes, and they tied us up with our own telephone wire, with our hands behind our back and up around our neck, and here we are. There's, I don't know how many there was quite a few, and Japs on each side, and it was automatic rifles and machine guns, and there was an old China hand standing beside me, and he says, well, he says, they shot all the Chinese. He's never took any Chinese prisoners. He said, looks like we're going to go along with them. And I said, Christ almighty. You know, I thought to myself. So I said to my two buddies, I said, well, you know, just try to be brave. You know, I said, sure glad I met you guys. And about that time, on our right, here come a Jap officer. With, oh Christ, he was all decked out and had a big sword and everything. And then we looked, and on the left, here come this Navy commander who's in charge of the island. He comes from the other direction, and he's in full uniform and shaved, and so he just took his sword and presented it to the Japanese, and so a little while later, they let us all go down in this big bomb shelter, which had been a hospital. So we just backed up to each other, undone ourselves, you know. And then maybe half an hour later or so, they let us out. So here's everybody's clothes laying around us. So all our clothes were stamped with our names in them, but you didn't have time to look for it. You just grabbed a shirt and a pair of pants, and then they put us on the airfield. They marched us to the airfield. Well, it was just a little ways away. And we stayed there for, I think, 2.5 days. During that day, we got a couple pieces of bread apiece and some water. And it's hotter than hell in the daytime, you know, and cold at night. And some of them, I remember our captain didn't even have a shirt. Some of them didn't even have And then they marched us over to the civilian camp, which was a real, you know, nice buildings and So we stayed there until I think it was January the 5th or 6th when they put us aboard this prison ship.
Was anybody telling you what was going on, or was it all just the rumor mill? I mean, did you know where you were going or what they were doing?
No, there was no idea where we were going. But this Major Baylor, he left. See, there was a PBY come in 2 or 3 days before we surrendered, and he left, and they took him to Midway because he was communications, and he wasn't supposed to be in that island anyway, or he could leave any time he wanted to. So, but he left and went to Midway, and he wrote a book, The Last Man Off Wake. He was the last man off and the first man on when they surrendered.
Wow. Huh. So where did they? So they a couple days went by, and they had you. They put you on the airstrip for a while, and then they move you into this other place. Then they transported you off by ship. Did they put you on a ship or?
Yes, we was on it was a passenger liner. They used to go from Frisco to China and Japan and Anita Maru. But we didn't have good quarters. I had a couple blankets in my arm, and we all carried all kinds of stuff, you know. Shit, we scrambled aboard, and they took everything away from us. All we had was just khaki shirt and khaki pants, and I don't know what they did with it, but next thing we knew, we were down in the hold. And 16 days later, we were in Shanghai. But we did understand, we went to Yokohama first, and they took off about 30 or 40 men. And then from Yokohama to Shanghai, I don't know how many days that was, but they took 2 Marines and 3 sailors up on deck and beheaded them and used them for bayonet practice, and then threw the rest of it over the side.
For no reason?
Retribution.
Were they? Was it to set a tone, to put fear in you? You think, or just?
Well, we never knew this until.
Oh, you didn't.
Until after the war was over. And here, 4 or 5 years ago, there's a fellow from Olympia. He was in his first Special Forces. His uncle was one of the sailors that had got beheaded, and so he got a hold of me, and I've been to a couple of their reunions, and but then in I think it was October 1943, they had left 98 civilians on the island, all special workers, you know, crane operators, welders, painters, and electricians, and they thought that the United States was going to take the island back, because every time a part of the fleet or aircraft carriers would go by, they would just bomb them and strafe them and just mess them up a little bit. And so they really thought that the United States was, this was right after one battle, I mean, one time that they had bombed them, you know. And so they took these 98 civilians down on the beach and handcuffed them, took their clothes off, handcuffed them, and machine gunned them. And they never knew this till after the war. And when the island surrendered, where they got to asking where these men were. And finally, some of the troops, it leaked out that the admiral and the vice admiral, whoever it was, were responsible for this. So they were taken to Tokyo and had a trial, and were later hung.
Wow.
Well, they're cruel, very cruel people. But if you read their history, that's the way they were raised. Now, do you watch the History Channel much?
Yes.
It showed one night about years ago, Japan didn't have much of an army, So whoever took hold of it decided discipline. And I mean it was discipline. I've seen corporals and sergeants just slap hell out of beat hell out of the privates and from the officers all the way down, you know. Whoever had the most rank could beat the hell out of the other guy. And that's the way they were. And that's the way they done to us.
I heard one POW tell me a story about a Japanese high-ranking official marching along, and the underling couldn't keep up with him, so he beheaded him. He said, but the thing is they treated their own soldiers just as bad as they treated the prisoners of war.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
yes. And the main thing was that they were raised from that high up in the Army, and from kids, it was a, if you surrendered, your soul wouldn't go to the big Zuccaraki shrine there in Tokyo or whatever. So that's the way it was, and they thought we were a disgrace to our country for surrendering.
So where the first camp that you ended up in, first POW camp, was where? Shanghai?
Yeah, Wusong. It was about, I'd say it was about 5 miles out of Shanghai, because we landed right in Shanghai. And they said it was so many kilometers, I know, but this was in January. Cold and kind of raining, you know. And just in khaki, and we marched out to this place, and lined us up in a field, and there was, I think, 6 or 7 wooden barracks. They were old Japanese army barracks. And I know I got in the second barracks. And that night, no blankets at all. And the next day, they gave us these 2 blankets. And Christ, you could hold them up there and read a newspaper through them. Oh, God. I've been cold ever since. We never had heat in the barracks. In any of the camps I was in, I never had heat. But, Christ, you just got used to it. And we slept on platforms about that high, and there was nothing there, just worse, because that's a little rug there, you know. This was just wood.
So you got that in a sheet, or
no sheets,
just that?
Just those 2 blankets. And I don't know how many months it was before, hell, you wouldn't see guys. The only time you'd see them is when they brought the food around, you know, because they were laying in it. The only thing you took off was your shoes, and you used those for a pillow. Oh, God.
Did they keep you together, everybody from Wake Island, or did they separate you, so they mixed you up?
They kept all the Wake Island people together. But in this prison camp, before we got there, and this was really something, that they had a gunboat. It was on the Yangtze or the Wangpu, where it must have been in the Wangpu, because that's where. Anyway, it was a gunboat wake. It was American gunboat. That was the name of the wake. And then the British one was the Petrel. These guys told us that the morning of the war, well, these Jap officers came aboard the wake and says, you got to surrender. The guy says, okay. Because a lot of guys were uptown. You know, they lived uptown. They were shacked up, you know, or married. Some of them were married. But when they went aboard this Petrel, this British ship, well, this British Higginbotham, I think was his name, or some damn thing, Wiggenhorn or something, he told him, get your bloody ass off my ship. And then he took off. Well, there was a Jap cruiser about a quarter mile down the river, and it just blew him right out of the water.
What was the at the first camp? Was it a camp that did something? I know some were shipyards and some were.
Well, we were way out in the country. I wound up in a shipyard, but in Japan, but we were way out in the country, and well, it rained so damn we didn't do nothing for 2 or 3 months, the only thing that helped us was these officers held school, held classes, on math and history and stuff. And hell, I learned more about math than I did in high school in a few months. And then when I got good weather, why, this had been a big battlefield, and so they kind of a swamp deal, and there's a lot of civilians who had been surveyors and stuff. We made a huge, big field, carried dirt into that swamp, and kind of wet, and made a big field, and we had a baseball field, a football field, and but in the meantime, this had been a battleground, and Christ, guys were finding all kinds of swords and bayonets. And this dumbhead, he came in one day and he had a German potato masher, a German hand grenade. And he was fooling around with this, for Christ's sakes, because we'd studied about it. Put that goddamn thing away. Oh.
Was there ever thought of escaping?
There was, I think there was 4 officers and a Chinaman, and a foreman from Morrison Knudsen that tried it, but they didn't make it. There wasn't any real escapes until I think it was in May of '45 when they moved them all out of Shanghai to Manchuria, and there was 4 officers. I think it was 4 or 5 officers, and 1 civilian that all made it. And there's a book, Wake Island Pilot. It was written by General Kinney, and he was just a second lieutenant when he was captured. But what a brain! He had worked for, I think it was Douglas or something as a mechanic before he went into the Marine Corps, and he contrived everything. He made himself a little shortwave radio and a compass and all sorts of things. And I think it was 3 years ago, he was at Fresno where we had a Wake Island reunion, and he showed us, like on a screen like that, all the stuff he made and everything. And I remember that morning I hadn't had my name tag on yet, and neither did he. And I was out by this pool, and I said, "Good morning, how you doing, buddy?" And we're standing there talking, and the guy come up and says, "Good morning, General." I thought, holy crap, is this guy a general? That was hard to believe, but it's just regular fellas.
Were the Japanese on you all the time, making you work, or did they just put you in these confines and just contain you? I mean, what?
Well, not really. They well, in the summer, when the weather got good, they decided to take us out on the roads and fill chuck holes and stuff like that. But we goofed off so much that they got tired of that. And everything we done, we screwed up, But then, right at the last, before we left, we had moved from Wusong to Kaiwong, and the last thing I was doing there when I left, they was making rifle butts, and it was, I don't know how many meters long it was, like 300 yards long, and about 50 yards wide, and they had little railroad tracks that we had little carts, and we'd push and fill full of dirt, push up. It got kind of high before I was out of there, but they kept right on us there.
Were they vicious, or were they did they relate to you as a human? I mean, were they mean?
It was just some of them. We had one, Ishihara. He wasn't even military. He was a civilian, but he was they called him the Beast of the East, but if you stayed away from him, you were all right. And then when we was in Wusa, well, both places, why there was a lot of civilian people that had been interned downtown, and they knew some of our officers, see, and so they would send in all kinds of stuff, and so we got, and then the Red Cross came in later on, and we gave us a pair of corduroy pants and a sweatshirt, and then we got, I think, what was in Japan, in China, 18 months, I got 4 Red Cross boxes. But in Japan, nishta, nothing. We got one time we got 1 Red Cross box for 7 people. So here's a spoonful of this and a spoonful of that.
What type of things were in the Red Cross boxes?
Oh, bully beef or corned beef. We call it, the Limeys call it bully beef, and can of Clem, powdered milk, and a brick of cheese, and a little can of coffee, Nescafe, and a couple packages of cigarettes. Mostly were old golds, and that's when I was there a couple of years before I started smoking, but I can remember old golds. Now you can't even find them on the market.
What about meals?
Well, we got a little, like a teacup, a metal teacup. We got that rice, just packed with rice, and then another teacup that same size. Excuse me, what we call slum, or wang pu juice. Once in a while, you'd find something in there.
No, what was wang bu juice? Was that fish or?
No, just vegetable. I mean, like vegetables, and stuff like that.
So you didn't go to a mess hall to eat then? They just.
Oh no. They brought it around in buckets. You had a big bucket of rice. And you start with this guy one day and the next guy, and then if there was any left for you, they had a little teeny cup, what we call a gizmo, for that guy. And it was quite a deal.
Did the guards or whatever? Did you ever get conversations with them, the Japanese?
Oh, some of them, yeah.
I mean, were some nice?
Some of them were real nice. Yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to just sit down and talk with them, or was it always?
I wasn't. The only time we had any fun with them was like after we'd made this baseball field. We were playing because the YMCA, the Navy, had a YMCA or something downtown, and the people after the Navy left, they sent in all this stuff we had. We had all kinds of baseball stuff and football stuff, and so we were playing baseball, and this guard, he was standing, he was standing just a little ways from the batter, and I can't remember who the batter was, but the guard, so the guy just walked over and gave him the bat, and the guard gave him his rifle. The little guard got up, and he tagged that ball real good. I wish I had a picture of that. They were real good until a superior came along, and then they knew they had to get tough.
Did it change from camp to camp? Were different camps?
Oh yeah.
Different levels of toughness.
Then in August of '43, I got. I think there was about 300 or 400 of us. We got sent to Japan, to a place called Samori, and we worked in a shipyard there. There was nice barracks. There were just new barracks. But that's when we worked. Sometimes we'd work 2 or 3 months without a day off. It just depended on where you were working, if they had a day off.
What was your job? Did it change day to day?
Well, I worked in cleaning castings that come out of the foundry, Like my buddy was across the street. He cleaned the great big stuff out. And these were pumps that they were putting together, and they were huge. And we had little teeny jackhammers that we cleaned the rest, that had to be real smooth. And you just stick your head in there, and no respirator, nothing, And that's why my lungs are fouled up from that trap, besides getting pneumonia a couple times. And I felt sorry for the Japanese people, these poor people. All there was just old people working there, and young kids, little kids 10, 12 years old. They'd come about noon. They'd march in there. It's the first time I've seen kids in uniform and packs on their back. And those kids were real good. Remember, I was working by the bench, and this little kiddie come by. He must not have been 8 or 10 years old, and he sang "Turkey in the Straw" in English. Yeah. And then the next little kiddie comes, lamplighting time in the valley, and they were a lot of fun. They didn't do hardly a thing, but everything was so crude. I was real happy to get to Japan and work in the shipyard, because I had been to the shipyard in Bremerton, before the war. Christ, everything was so crude, that I thought, boy, this shouldn't last too long.
Were these military ships that you were working on?
Oh, yeah, they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
But, it would take, by the time those things come out of the, excuse me, the foundry, and we cleaned them up, and we drilled all the holes, tapped them and everything. This was all by hand. Oh, God. We'd drink around all day with 4 or 5 holes, It would be months before those pumps were ever ready to send to the ship. And we could see some of these merchant ships come in. There was a great big old field piece in front, like a Civil War cannon, same way on the stern.
Did you have any contact to home while you were in there? While you were in the prison camps, could you get letters or anything, or did they not catch up?
Well, I did one time. I got about 4 or 5 letters. But then, when I'd go home at night, I go back to the barracks at night when I got a chance to work behind the Japanese office, building a fire for their bathtub, And so to start it, they'd bring me paper, and then a couple times they brought me a box full of letters. Here's one of the letters I'd written home. They didn't have anybody smart enough to read them, and to tell if there's any mistakes in it. And so I said, what the hell is the use of writing home?
So they were just destroying them?
They were just destroying them.
Huh. Did you ever think you weren't going to get out of...
Oh, hell, no. I always knew I was going to make it. And then to see that, in March or April, it was March, when they'd come over once in a while and bomb, but then it was in April of 45 when they really got us. They started at 8 o'clock at night and bombed steady till 4 o'clock in the morning. And these were naphtha gel. They were long, 3-inch, about 3 feet long. They drop them in clusters and whirl out. And that's wherever they started to hit, they'd set a fire. And 3 or 4 of those landed in our barracks. 3 fellows got killed. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, they moved us again. But they never hit the factory. I can't believe that. But I tell you, we were real happy the first bombers we seen come over. And they would run us back to the barracks at first. Then it got so, it'd be every day that we just stay, you know. But I can remember at first we'd see the bombers come over in Jap planes, go and get at them, and after a couple of days, they didn't even try anymore because there was so much firepower on those planes.
So you definitely could see the superiority of
Oh God, yeah. They were B-29s, and they even had pictures of them in the Navy Yard where we worked. You know, Binijuku, and we, Okina. I mean, it's big. We told them, hell, that ain't big. They got bigger ones than that, you know. We had the last interpreter we had in the shipyard. He was really comical. EKE was his name, and I'd worked across the bench from him for quite a while, and he wasn't doing anything, and that was unusual for Japanese. You know, he was lazier than we were. So one day I said to my buddy, I said, "That's the laziest damn Jap I've ever seen." He leaned across. He says, "I'm not lazy. I just don't like to work for these people." He was conscripted labor, and he didn't make enough a day for a pack of cigarettes. His folks had an import and export business in Tokyo, and then he became our honcho, or our boss, and we had a lot of fun with him. We'd get 15 minutes in the morning for tea break. You know, we'd go outside and have tea, and we would get to BS with him, and we'd get it to half an hour, sometimes 45 minutes or a half hour. He'd say, "Damn you guys." we got so that we'd come in the morning and say, "EK, when are you guys going to quit?" He says, "Geez, I wish it'd be pretty quick." We said, "How do you feel like this?" He says, "Well, we shoot on one of your planes. A week later, you got 10 more. We sink one of your ships." He said, "And a month later, you got 5 or 6. Look what we got." I would have liked to seen him after the war, but we weren't there. We got, in April of 45, as I told you, that big, when they hit our barracks and everything. In fact, there was a big fire station right alongside of us. All the fire trucks left and the fire station burned down. we had a devil of a time to keep our barracks and go down where the warehouse where our food was. So about 2 or 3 weeks later, they moved us up towards Niigata to a little place called Noetsu, just a small town. It had 3 steel mills, and we were never bombed there. They just flew over us.
So was that your third camp?
That was the 4th camp.
4th camp. So you went to 4 different
camps. And this Sanders, he was in all the camps I was in. Sandy.
Yeah.
God, he was a nice guy. He had to wind up with a big C.
Now, did you know him prior to going in the war, or you met him?
No, I met him in the service.
You met him in the service. Huh.
He was in communications. He was in the telephone.
Stringing those cables, he said. Was there bartering that went on within the prison camps, or?
Hell yeah. Like when we got these Red Cross boxes, they were trading for everything. I remember we got a little box of tea, and nobody wanted tea, and the guys who were smart, they got this for cheap. And then after all the rest of the stuff, the coffee and every junk, that tea sold for pretty good, you know. And they were trading for everything. With cigarettes, you could buy a bowl of rice for cigarettes. You know, you could buy a guy's ration of cigarettes, and some of the guys that was real hard smokers, they damn near starved to death. And they finally they finally gave orders that no trading for food. You could trade. Well, sure, because
So that they would.
oh
would,
yeah.
Put one more piece of tape on here. Keeps falling off. Well, so did you barter just with your own soldiers, or did you do a little bartering with the guards also? I mean, were there things that?
Well, some of the guys bartered with this, but the only time I ever bartered with them was for, Christ, we had diarrhea for 3 years, we'd trade cigarettes for sulfanilamide pills, and that would stop your diarrhea for a while.
And were those from the Japanese?
Yeah, from the Jap guards.
Because you didn't really get, or did you get medical attention at all?
So we did in China, we had a lot of stuff from China, but it got to Japan, you got a little package with powder for everything, Christ, you got flea powder, you got a deal. We'd put it in it. We'd put this flea powder in a little dish, dump a couple lice in there, fleas, and shit, they just swim around in it. They didn't. But they had a powder for everything.
When you were in the camp, what did you think about I don't know, keep you in a positive attitude or to looking forward? I mean, did you, with the other guys, talk about home or did you put home out of your mind?
Well, we thought about home and this was funny. A lot of guys, you guys sitting in the corner and they were all making recipes, the food or what they're going to do when they get out, And I'd look at it, Christ almighty, a lot of it was rice all in this, That out of this library, I got a hold of a book of Robert W. Service, and I liked his poems, so I learned a bunch of them, like Shooting of Dan McGrew and the Cremation of Sam McGee and There's a Race of Men and My Madonna, and just something to keep your mind busy, because you had to keep your mind busy.
Now, let's see, you went in young, so you weren't married.
No.
Did you have a girlfriend at home?
Yeah, but not that much, because here I've been in San Diego and Pearl Harbor, and you didn't even get close to girls. There were so many of them, and when they found out you was a Marine and only making $36 or $54 a month, it was the sailors they wanted. Who made more money. So I really never had any particular one.
So you didn't have to face that. You didn't get the Dear John letter, or
oh no, I didn't even know what that was until I got home.
Did you lose any of your friends on Wake Island?
Well, one kid that was in our outfit, his name was Venable. He was from Pottsville, Pennsylvania. And a regular, well, he was kind of a hick to us, but he was a real good kid. And right after we got captured, well, he'd been, getting canned goods. It was out in the brush, and then he'd only eat half of it, and then in those days it was 10 or something, and he got diarrhea and he died that way. But my real close friends, not only one or two.
So you were pretty lucky in that way then.
Oh yes, we didn't lose many really, because we were all young and everything.
Young and invincible.
Oh yeah.
How'd you get set free?
Well, in this little place called Noetsu, I was working in a shipyard. I worked in a blacksmith shop, and we were the only company working that day. And we would go to this building for a noon chow and eat our lunch, And boy, at 1 o'clock, that's the Malay, boy. That's outside. Go to work. And so this day, why, come 1 o'clock, or come 12:30, we looked, and right up ahead of us in this building that's where all the honchos sat, and the guards, and they all took off about 12:30. They all disappeared. So 1 o'clock came, and we knew we had to stay there, and we stayed there, and then we said, what the hell is going on, and about 1:30, here they came. No smiles, no holler, no nothing. Just says, go to work. I went back to work, and all of the Japs, there was 6 or 7 of them there, they're all sitting down, not saying a word. I said to the honcho, I says, hey, how come no work? And how come should go tonight? He said, no heat, no lights. He said, no electricity. And Christ, I looked up there and all the lights were burning. So I asked him what to do. So he told me that since the war, the war's over. I couldn't believe it. So he told me, and so then I went next door and got a friend of mine that could really speak Japanese. And boy, he rattled it right off, and pretty soon my buddy started crying like mad. He says, hey, it is over. So then about an hour later, they marched us all back to camp. But that little honcho I had there, he was really a wonderful old man. He had lost an eye. He'd fought in China. They'd been fighting the Chinese since '32. And I got to like him real well. He'd like me, because I'd have to come in the morning and bow to him, and then he'd tell us all what to do. And one day he showed me a picture. He had 3 daughters. And by then all those Japanese women were getting good looking, And I told him, just BSing him. I said, that middle one, 6 months more. I'm staying here and marry her. God. After that, he'd bring me cigarettes. He'd bring me beans. Oh, I had a lot of fun. But the funniest thing, I'd have to bow to him every morning and say in Japanese, good morning. I can't remember his name now, like Wako-san or some darn thing. And he'd say good morning to me, Ohayos. But he says, he got me up in his office. That's when I got real chummy with him, have tea and more English. I'd say, good morning, Marvin-san. They tell him to say, good morning, Marvin-san. So he learned that. And every morning he'd say, good morning, Marvin-san. And I'd say, good morning. What the heck I can't remember his name. Matuda-san. More. Okay, so good morning, how are you? So then he'd say every morning, good morning, how are you? And then he got to more. And so I taught him to say, good morning, Marvin-san. What the hell are you going, words? You care? And I told the guys, I says, hey, now, don't break up in the morning, because we're going to get this. And you turn that thing off while I say that. Oh, he was something else. I felt sorry for those 4 people, the Japanese people, because the longer the war went, the more they had to work, and the less money they got. And if they didn't work, they didn't get rations for food, see? And some of those poor people. And after the war, we would go in their houses, right in this small town. We'd just go any place we wanted to, We was there damn near a month. and here's lathes and all kinds of stuff. Everybody was working. And I got to later on that these old people that had these lathes was making this stuff and sending it to whoever put it together. But it was only about half right because they didn't have, the right measurements and right stuff like that.
Did they? So it sounds like, because it's an interesting thing about war.
There's nothing interesting about it.
Well, I guess, I mean,
yeah.
historically what I mean is,
Oh, sure.
there's this surreal aspect, because here you talk about a very human relationship,
Yeah.
almost like buddies. And you tease him and, more English, and so you throw a little bit and have fun with him. Who did you think the enemy was? Was it a country or was it people?
It was the military. See, Japan, before that, Japan had never was always ruled by the military. Now they got parties, different parties over there, But here, if the military said, "Hey, this is it," some of those poor villages, there wasn't a young man in the whole village. They were all off to war, and all that was left was old people and kids, and it was really disheartening for some of those people, There's some of those families that, some of them, they never knew where their sons even were, or never came back. So I really, for the Japanese people themselves, the civilians, I felt sorry for them.
So you don't hold an animosity?
Not a minute against the Japanese people, but the military. But then if you read, that's the way they were brought up.
Now, in your stuff, you have the canteen, the cook kit.
Oh, the cook kit.
Yeah, where did you get that?
Oh, I got that in Osaka. See, there's a bunch of these were Japanese. They come from the Dutch East Indies, and they came in with shorts too, and like this, the poor home guard. And they were probably the filthiest people I ran into. But we had Aussies, we had English. One of my best friends, he just passed away a year or so ago. He was on an English merchant ship, and he was in English Navy. And we had my God, Borneo. We had them all.
Now, it's interesting. You mentioned some, if I understood right, U.S. citizens that had been interned in Japan.
Yes.
So the same thing that happened here. We always talk about how,
Oh, yeah.
So the same thing happened in Japan.
Oh, sure.
Now, did they put those people in the prisoner camps?
No, they stayed downtown. Even like this one ship, the hell was it? The Henderson. We had the officers in our camp, but the crew, they just let stay downtown.
Huh. Now, once you got set free, again, the newsreels, they always show the end of the war and these big parades and ticker tapes. But that's not what you faced, is it? I mean,
Oh, hell no.
war was over, and then what happened? I mean, you had to get home somehow.
Well, we stayed, like I say, we stayed about over the 16th, and we didn't get out of there till the 10th or 12th the next month. And we got to Guam, we went to Guam, and there was no parades, no nothing, And even when we landed in San Francisco, and there was no parades. I think the most startled I was we got off there, and some of the guys said, we saw there were some Marines here, and they were in skirts. I said, what the hell was Marines doing in skirts? Well, we didn't know that there was women Marines. I said, Jesus Christ. Look at that.
So when you got back, did you stay in the Marines?
No, I didn't. I got out. I that was at Oakmole Hospital for 2 or 3 weeks, and then there was two of us flew up to Sandpoint and then to Bremerton, and I was so confused. I didn't want to stay. In fact, it took me a week to get from Seattle to Bremerton. I knew my brother lived in Kent, so I just took a taxi and went to Kent. They never found out about it until I got paid off. And then this lieutenant, he says, "Sergeant, where were you?" He says, "I see you were over leave for 5 or 6 days. Where'd you go?" I said, "I went home." "That's good," he says.
So what did you do after the service? What did you do when you got out of the service?
Well, I got a job as a mechanic, and then later on I had a service station for 27 years. And in between time I fished up, commercial fished, in the summer times. And then I got a job as maintenance for a septic tank outfit, which is real good friends of mine, and I worked there for 10 years, and then I retired. I got a fibrile, something wrong with my heart anyway. It doesn't beat right. So
Dad's got the same thing.
I got retired.
Did it? How do you think World War II changed your life, or do you?
I don't know. It made me realize that these wars aren't all what they cracked up to be. If you really want to read something about World War II, you read "We Slept at Dawn," the book "We Slept at Dawn," and I was there, and "The Day of Infamy." This will tell you this. See, this was, we were brought into this. The United States was brought into this World War II. Our friend Churchill. See, we had to help Nazism, the Nazis. We had to get rid of them. So I think it's all politics myself. Maybe I'm haywire. But
That's what I've heard a lot of people say.
Sure. Why did we go to Korea? Why did we go to Vietnam? They say it was rubber, it was oil, or hey, I don't know. But look at all our youth that they're wasting.
Did it change anything, the war, do you think?
You mean in Europe, or for me?
In the world.
Well,
I mean, when you think about...
I think it got rid of the Nazis, because they were terrible. They were even more horrid than look, they figured they lost 6 million. They killed 6 million Jews. Hey, we're not supposed to do that. Who are we to take somebody else's life?
When we started this project, the argument some people had in doing this oral history of vets is that all these veterans are glorifying war. That's what's going to happen.
Shit. No way. There's nothing to be glorified about war. No way. A friend of mine, Jack Jacobson, I went to school with, he lives out here in Rosedale. He was captured by the Germans in Anzio. And they took him to Germany, put him in a prison camp, and I said, "Jack, how was it? How was prison camp?" He says, "Just like Hogan's Heroes." He says, "Holy Christ, we'd get up when we felt like it, and he says, we stayed filthy and dirty, just to make the Japs, just to make the Germans mad. But," he said, "it never got really tough until during the end of the war, when Russia was closing in on, and they had to march, because the Germans didn't want to get captured by the Russians. And so I don't know how many hundreds of miles they marched. And he said it was really tough then. But you got to get a hold of him. He is a character. He was in a special forces. He was in that movie, The Devil's Brigade. That was a movie they made about this first special forces.
Huh.
And he's a kick. He's.
Do you? What did you think when 9/11 happened? When the trade towers in New York were hit by the two planes with Osama bin Laden?
Oh, I couldn't believe that they'd do something like that. I couldn't believe they'd bring it to the United States, but they've been having it in foreign countries for years, you know. But why us?
Was it a deja vu? I mean, I hear some people say that that's going to be my Pearl Harbor. That's the closest I'm going to get. I mean, was it like all of a sudden here we are again, or?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't think of it in that way. I don't know what to think of it. Well, you get in that kind of argument with people, and so politics and all that junk. I don't.
Do you think that there's a message from World War II for future generations that they should know about, that the history books haven't put in there, that kids today and future generations might not understand?
Well, when I went to school, it was all ancient history about the Romans and I could have cared less. This happened thousands of years ago, you know. But then when I got to the Civil War, well, that's when I really got interested with it, because I've got these letters, you know, from my grandfather and all about the whole way through the Civil War, and what they fought for was against slavery, and I didn't know anybody in World War II. I mean World War One, because my dad he had a crippled arm, and he couldn't get in, and I can't remember when I had any. I must have had kinfolk. I'm sure I did somewhere along the line, but I was happy that my two brothers didn't have to. They were a lot older than I was, and they didn't have to go. They worked in the shipyard, and they were so. Well, I think they should know something about it, about World War II.
I think it's interesting because you talked about how when you were in school, what was ancient history.
Oh God, yeah.
And World War II, for the generations coming now, is ancient history.
Oh yes.
and what I see is that, because when I looked at a lot, even for me, Civil War history, I looked at, you know, these people, and they had, you know, drawings of them, and so they were characters. Even though I kind of knew they were real people, it was still not real. Where World War II, in talking to real people, there's that understanding that war, take away the two or the one or Korea or Vietnam, war is real people, men, women, children, families that are affected.
Well, it wasn't in the history, you know, because they just lined up with swords and fought till dark, and then they just went back and laid down, and the next morning they fought again. But it isn't, you know, it isn't like World War One, and those trenches, and because I knew a few of the neighbors that life in the trenches and stuff was terrible.
Yeah. Huh. Are you glad you served?
Oh, yes, I am. I'm not, you know, they said, well, shouldn't you feel bad about being a prisoner? Hell, hey, you go into service. They don't guarantee you a bloody thing, you know. No. They can't say, well, hey, you're not going to get killed, or you're not going to be this, or you're not going to be that. It's just it. You just take your lumps. And so, no, that's. I'm just damn glad I come back, because just look at those thousands and thousands of poor Marines and sailors and soldiers in the Pacific that didn't make it. See, or the same way in Europe. So I did lose a little weight, you know. I weighed 180 pounds when I was captured, and 115 when they let me loose. I tell you, we got aboard this ship and we just continuously around and around in the chow line. But after we got in Guam, I went to this hospital, and then when we got back on again to go to Pearl Harbor, they gave us tiddlywinks of different colors for each meal. You know, you couldn't sneak back to the chow line. And I remember we were going along the rail, you know, and just before we go into the galley, there's a couple of great big corpsmen, you know. My God, they looked at me 6'6" or something. And anyway, he put a couple pills in my hand, and he says, I said, what the hell are these for? He says, they're vitamin pills. And I threw them on over the side. I said, oh, I want something to eat. He just picked me up. He says, eat them. Okay, buddy. Right.
This might pop down on here.
Oh.
What, is there, you know, it's interesting because you talked about the guys in the camp making the recipes.
Oh.
Is there something, in different POWs I've talked to have had one different meal that they've thought about while they were in camp of when they got home, they wanted to have whatever. Is there a food that you thought about, or was food not your...
I that didn't bother me too much. Because once I got working on their minds, then I had a real good buddy, Kroptovich. He was from Scranton, Pennsylvania. He was a real good baseball player, and he was in my outfit. And I'd had him on guard duty a few times, and we was in Osaka there. Why, my buddy Snyder said, "Hey, I hear Kroptovich is down in the hospital sick." So he said, "Well, we'll go down and visit him tonight." So he down, poor old Krop, he was laying in a sack, you know, he hardly talked. And he says, "I'm going to die." I said, "Well, you ain't going to die, Krop. For crap's sakes." He says, "I just feel like I don't want to live anymore." So we tried to talk him out of it, but no way. So the next day at work, Snitz and I, we got together, and we said we'd go down and see him tonight. So the bunk was like that, you know, and up here was a shelf with all your clothes and your shoes. And so we go in there, and he said, "What do you guys want? What are you guys doing?" I said to Snitz, I says, "Snitz, I get his shoes. They're my size." And Snitz says, "Well, I want his pants and shirt because they just fit me." And I said, "Well, I'll take his shaving gear and stuff because I'm running short on mine." And he says, "What the hell are you guys talking about?" Well, he says, "You're going to die anyway. Well, you don't want to give it to those damn corpsmen." He says, "You SOBs, get out of here." 4 days later, he was back in the barracks. He said, "You guys were a bunch of damn ghouls." But I figured we saved his life. And we still talk about that. I got him on the hook the other day on the phone, and he says, "You damn guys."
So you keep track of a lot of them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do.
Is there a special bond? I mean, is there a different friendship that you have with the people that serve?
Oh, yeah, because we lived with them, you know. We slept side by side with them for years. And I had a big guy, LaRue. He was from North China. They sent the North China Marines. They had legation guards at Pekin, Tianjin, and Qingwantao. Now they call it Beijing, you know. But anyway, it was Tianjin and Pekin then. But anyway, we got to be honchos and for a section of 50, you know. And he was quite a guy. To pass the time away, sometimes he'd just, an hour before we had to turn out the lights, he said, let's take a trip. I said, where do you want to go? I said, let's go to France tonight. You know, and he'd make up a big deal, and it was comical as the dickens, you know, it made you laugh. And the next time we'd go to Norway, or and he seemed to know all these places, but it was fun, you know. It was.
So did everybody just sit?
Well, they'd sit there and listen to him, you know. And then we got another kick out of it. We had to count off. Section of 50, you know, every morning and every night. In fact, every place you went, you had to count off. And this was in Japanese. And we had this, he was an old merchant marine, Dutch, I remember. But when it come to our section, well, you'd have to say in Japanese there's 50 men, but there's 3 in the hospital, 3 in the Suiji, that's in the galley, and 3 is sick, you know, and then you'd say bunko, that's count off. And if a guy screwed up the count, oh God, they wouldn't get that guy, they'd get us, see. We had this Dutch, if you didn't put him in number 23, I don't give a damn what his number was. It's a Nijusan, you know. So we'd have to make a dummy run every morning and every night. Oh God, we got to love the guys. It didn't make a damn bit of difference. It was everything. We never dwelled on just the funny things, you know. See, if you got the hell beat out of you, you know, you come in and says, what the hell's the matter with you? Yeah, you're losing it. You used to take more punches than that, you know, because if you felt sorry for a guy,
and that's where the survival takes.
Oh yeah, and you had your buddies. If you got sick and you wanted more chow, I'd give you half of my chow, or vice versa, or I'd go steal medicine for you, or it's your buddies, you know, and like funny. A couple of the funniest things was in China when this lady sent into to our Major Devereaux a minor bird, and you know you can make them talk like parrots, you know, and this Ishihara, well, everybody hated him, detested that bugger. Anyway, they thought that minor bird to say Ishihara is a bastard. And finally he came around, and boy, he got that bird got out of camp quick. It was a comical thing, you know.
Did people get beat often? And was it for a specific reason, or just?
Sometimes it's just for not saluting them. Oh, Christ. You had to salute these damn little guards. They walk right under your arm, see? And if you didn't salute them, or if you didn't have a hat on them, you had to bow to them, you know. You had to get up and you had to put your hands like this, and you had to do a 45, and oh, God, that was... I always had something in my head. I said, good morning, you little bastard. You know, to yourself. Or up your...
Smiling at him all the time.
Yeah. But, oh yeah, I got a few dandies myself. And then they had, say if they caught you and I arguing or something, you know. Okay, then we'd have to stand up to each other and start slapping each other. That was one of their punishments, you know. And then pretty soon I'd say, God damn it, you're hitting a little hard. Well, so are you. And then pretty soon we were knocking each other on our butts. Or another deal was hold a bucket of water over your head and see how long you can do that. Or hold your hands up like this, just empty, you know. See how or hold your hands out. Oh, God.
Well, that had to be, I mean, physically, emotionally, mentally, all of the above, challenging. I mean, you had to really keep your mind in what was going on.
You blanked a lot of that crap out.
Was there a time that did you ever get down in camp? Or, I mean, were there lonely times where you just missed things at home? Like, were you there for a Christmas?
Oh, 42, 43, 44.
Was that hard, or did you guys find some way to?
Well, 41, we spent Christmas on the airport. So it was 4 Christmases, see, under Japanese. I never got down too much. Because I always had this LaRue, if you did start to get down, well, he'd always get on you, you know. And we was always pulling tricks on each other, too. Yeah, he's quite a guy.
So once you left, you never saw any of the guards again?
No. We found out the war was over. Like I say that last morning, at night when we come home and we all tell everybody the war's over there, you're full of baloney, you know. So we'll know when we fall off for work the next morning. Next morning they did fall us out. But they're giving us a big speech that there was a 3-day cessation of war. And about that time, here come one of those torpedo bombers. Damn near took the top of the roof off, and he dropped a carton of cigarettes and a little parachute that the war was over. And the next day, there wasn't a mean guard around. They all left. Because one of them, there was a bunch of us was going to tag him. And we, I did, my buddy Tardowski and I, he did. We threw a little Jap right in the river. Because he got me beat up about a week before, you know, just because I called him a monkey. And, of course, everything you done against him, you was doing it against the emperor, see? So, this is after the war, and I was in the galley talking to my buddy Ski, and here he come with a bowl. He was a civilian. And I says, hey, Ski, that Hummer he got the hell beat out of me here last week. He says, oh, get him over here. So I go like this. That's how they mean come here, see? And so he says, get him over by this door. So I did. he took the guy's bowl and set it down. And he said, now Marvin, open the door. And I opened the door and he grabbed him by the nape of the neck and he threw him right in the river. He says, close that door. Well, I don't know. We don't know whether the damn guy swam or we never bothered to look.
Oh boy. So did they a lot of the guards disappeared?
Oh yeah, all of the meanies. In fact, the only reason they kept guards there was they figured maybe the Japanese people would come after us, but hell, they didn't. We'd take hikes, we'd walk, we'd go any place we wanted to there for, I don't know. If we get tired of walking, we'd walk out the gate, my buddy and I, and here come a couple of Japs on a bicycle. We'd grab the bikes and tell them, mate, mate, just wait. So we'd go riding out in the country a couple of hours, come back, they'd be right there. But this was funny, the second or third day, here come a couple of guys come in dragging a couple of pigs, you know. Butchered them, you know. And then later, next day, come in with a cow, same thing. But then the B-29s come over and dropped us food. Parachuted it.
Did they when they were dropping you food, did they tell you how you were going to get home or anything?
No.
So how did you figure out? Because that's the thing people don't think about is, okay, you're in this prison camp, you're in the middle of Japan or wherever, and
Well, we're just waiting for. We was quite a ways up from Tokyo, you know, and So the rest of everybody left before we did. The Aussies and the rest of them all left 4 or 5 days before we did. And so they had this commander. He was a submarine commander, submarine captain off the Grenadier. And he says, "My God, we're going to Tokyo." So my buddy and I were both corporals, and he said, "Get a couple armbands made and put on MPs." So he said, "Okay." And we marched across the bridge to this train station, and he told that guy, that officer, "We want to train at 10 o'clock tomorrow, going to Tokyo." And he gave him a little lip. And the next thing I knew, he just knocked him for a loop. We left the next morning at 10 o'clock.
So was that the Japanese-run train?
Yeah, Japanese, yeah.
So you were using their systems to get around?
Oh, yeah.
So you got into Tokyo.
Yeah.
And then...
This was real funny. He was a fighter pilot. He had jet down over Rabaul somehow. And anyway, we was making milk stops, picking up everybody, And the guys were getting off, and you just go in the store and grab a bottle of sake and grab just this or that, And they had, and those guys that had been before us had a lot of money. We had a whole barrel full of money, and they were just throwing it at the Japs, And he was coming around hollering, I want everybody to quit drinking." He says, "Somebody's going to fall off." About 3 o'clock that afternoon, the train stopped and backing up. And what the hell is going on? So it was this lieutenant that got drunker than hell, and he fell off. Oh. Like I say, I just want to remember the funny things.
Yeah.
They were tough on officers. They beat that last place. They'd beat our officers just like mad. Just once or twice a week, they'd just line them up. I remember this one poor Navy officer. We came in one day and he had a sign around his neck, "I'm a thief." And he had stole a couple onions out of the garden. And those 2 onions were pinned in here, He stood there for 2 days.
So they were hard. That seems like part of the survival of war is to put aside some and remember.
Oh, yeah, like my buddy Jacobson said about this German prison camp. He says, hell, when he got there, some guys that had been there a couple of years had a family started downtown. These were old World War I guards, German guards, old guys that didn't give a damn. Give them a couple packs of cigarettes or something, and hell, you could go any place. And he said it was really something.
That's again that perception that I think that a lot of people have of prisoner camps are of the concentration camps in Germany.
Yeah.
Versus some of these that were almost like a factory. It sounds like if you negotiated, you could.
Oh, those guys. Yeah. Well, you ever see that picture, Stalling 17? Oh, we had a reunion in Oklahoma City at that time, and that was a premiere of it. And it was just for POWs and their wives and stuff. Then after it was over, I just, what the hell is his name? The main character. Well, we walked up, and he stood up the shades, and we shook his hand. I'm trying to think of his name, but.
Yes, I'm always so terrible at remembering names and.
Oh God.
So when did you end up in Gig Harbor then? Right after the war, or did it take you a while to end up?
Well, no, like I say, we were from Oakland Hospital. We were sent to Bremerton Naval Hospital, and then like I say, it took me a week to get from Kent to Bremerton, or from Seattle to Bremerton, but then I'd come home, L.A.
Well, what was Bremerton like right after the war? I mean,
Well, my mother lived in Bremerton, or just right out of Bremerton a little ways. And so, I don't know, I didn't fool around downtown Bremerton much. And I'd just come, well, I had to go through a whole mess of check places, you know. I mean, they checked me for this and checked me for that. I'd get so many checks. Then I'd go home, you know. I'd come back. And I fooled around for about a month. And finally they asked me, said, when are you going to take a 90-day furlough? I says, I didn't even know I had one coming. So I took a 90-day furlough, but hell, all they did over there, they just looked up as far as they could see and down as far as they could see, and that was it, you know. Because our doctors didn't know nothing about malnutrition or, you know, beriberi, pellagra, or any of that stuff. So that's.
Were there a lot of ex-military then that got decommissioned out of Bremerton?
You mean that left the service?
Yeah.
I imagine it was. I don't know. I didn't.
You just got on with your life and.
Yeah, I only spent about a week down in the Marine Barracks before I got out. That was real funny. I couldn't get out of the gate, you know, the first couple of days because I didn't have a Liberty card. And so I went down to the Marine Barracks and asked to see the first sergeant. And he says, what's your serial number? I says, hell, I don't know. He said, what do you do with your dog tags? I said, I never had a dog tag. He says, you gotta be. Yeah, I said, no, I'm not. Then I remember that I had a little piece of paper that when we left Shanghai, Major Devereaux gave us it. This is so-and-so, a member of the 1st Defense Battalion from Wake Island, and it's signed his name. And so I said, here, this is all I got, the identification I got. And he went in to the office, the major's office, and the major come back. He says, can I have this for a souvenir? I says, no. and he says, you mean to tell me that you never knew your serial number? I says, no. I says, we never had dog tags. So then finally they looked up my serial number, and because I'd go to these different places, you know, military places, and okay, what's your serial number? I'd just give my rifle number. And that's because I knew that. He says, how in the hell have you been getting by? I said, I just give him my serial, my rifle number. So then I had to learn my serial number. But they wanted me to ship over, and I was a sergeant then. I'd been a sergeant when we were first captured to give us an extra rate, see? So I had seniority up to Gazoo for a sergeant from the 23rd of December 41 till this was 46, see? And he says, if you ship over, we'll make you platoon sergeant. I said, you make me platoon sergeant, then I'll ship over. Well, why? I says, hey, the chapters of promises so many things. I don't believe in promises. And then he says, well, if we make you platoon sergeant, well, we got a shipment, we got a detail going out to Midway Island. I said, no. I says, I've spent the last four and a half years on islands. I says, that's just like my buddy. He was from Colorado, and he says, I got out of this damn Marine Corps. I'm going to buy me a car. I'm going to tie a set of oars on it and start inland. And the first damn people that ask me what those are, that's where I'm going to stay.